a farm about an hour and 15 minutes from here, um, where I have my studio and my teaching facility. I guess the thing that's important for me to say is I have enormous curiosity and an incredibly active brain that always wants to go this way. I'm not a linear thinker most of the time. And so I have a hard time bringing it all back into a focus. And I kind of assessed what I've done over my career and feel that even though I have these long series of works, like the construction series in which I've done about 105 quilts, I felt that in looking at my past work, I was jump in so many different directions. And I thought, when I wanted to curate this exhibition about mastery, I was hoping that each person would show these three works that would show this kind of growth and connection in the work. And for me, I thought Crow, I talk to myself as Crow, you need to get onto one idea that you love and take it a little bit more in depth. Now, I'm just going to say this. I do wish the lighting were flooding from the top to the bottom so you could see my colors better. So this is actually number 6, number 7, number 8, and the small one over there is number 9. So there have been some other pieces preceding this series called Riff. I make quilts about beauty. My quilts also come a lot from my life experiences, and these quilts come from my childhood. So I had a mother who had 6 kids, and then she had my brother and me when she was 43 and 44. So you can imagine, after having 6 kids starting at age 19, one after the other, having 2 when you're in your early 40s. So my mother was a person who, I know that she was very creative and she felt she didn't have any time for herself. So her usual comments to my brother and me were, go outside and don't come back. But also go outside and daydream. She was always pushing daydreaming. Go out and daydream, but you can just stay out there for 4 or 5 hours and leave me alone. So the other thing that my mother did, and I loved her, believe me, I love my mom, she would wag her fingers. Now, don't go near the railroad tracks. And she would give us all the horror stories of what would happen on the railroad tracks. And the railroad tracks were very close to our house, so as a child, if you're daydreaming and you're lying at bed at night and you hear the train coming, I know I used to remember thinking, the train's going to come into my bedroom and it's going to run over me. So I had very vivid ideas of railroad tracks. So the very first quilt in this series, so this is a riff on the railroad tracks, was a monoprint. And that, I made this very large monoprint. All the pieces in this series so far are very large pieces. But when so anyway, going back to the monoprint, you can notice that my thoughts sometimes, I'm jumping on to the next thought already. I monoprinted actually very narrow segments of fabric and put those together, and I love that quilt, but it gave me the idea of how I could go forward then as a machine piecer, because monoprinting, I love it, but it's so different from machine piecing, where I have to dye up all my fabrics ahead of time and be ready to go. And when you're working on something this big, I'm talking 10 yards of a color. And these are my most saturated colors. I've dyed them 3 times to get them this saturated. So then going from the monoprint and moving through, I thought the thing I want to play with is scale. I want to know how far I can move my tracks into a much larger scale. How small can I go with them? I tried to make them even smaller for the small studies back there, and it wasn't in me. So I have one piece back there that turned out to be 4 by 4. The other thing when I say my work is about beauty, because aside from the fact that it's about tracks, it's about what I hope is beautiful spatial. I want beautifully spatial proportions. And if it doesn't happen, I will keep working until it does happen. Super important. My work is all totally improvisational. These were not worked out ahead of time in any way, shape, or form. I did go into manufacturing mode to make tracks, all different types of tracks. So in my brand new studio on my farm, which took 2 years to build, and I will just tell you is 50 feet long and 36 feet wide, I can do what I want and pin up as many tracks as I want, and I can stare at them for hours and days and months. And when I feel like it, I can start pinning them on the wall and moving them around and working them. So the other thing I want to say is the quilting pattern. I thought about what this is, you know, on the railroad tracks, they always have these black pieces of chunks of rocks, and I don't know if it's coal or what. So those just are the chunks of rocks around the railroad tracks. And I also don't quilt my work. I'd rather do all the piecing, but I do design what I want on my work. And again, Marina Badawin, who's here, and I know I'm not saying your last name correctly because it's French, but she did the quilting. What else can I say? These are just versions of the riff on railroad tracks. And the other thing I will add to that, because I'm now at number 9, there is a kind of formality to these pieces, which I actually love. I really love it. But it also permits me now to get really wild with these things. I've kind of worked through that part, and now I've done I kind of love them. They're kind of little beautiful pencil sketches that are about this big of how I can now start moving with the tracks in a much more free manner.